Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing good. Hope your day's going good. I hope you enjoyed the latest Final Fantasy stream. I ran around like a headless chicken for I don't know 2.5 hours trying to figure. But we got some stuff done. All right, we beat a lady at a card game. We sorry, everything's popping up at once. We beat a lady at a card game. We rode some chocobos. We had fun. And I think it's the small things like that that matter. Like I said in the stream, I'm not rushing the playthrough. I just want to have fun with it. The first stream, I was kind of just trying to get to the end, but you know, now I'm working at it a lot harder than I was. That's for sure. Sorry, the frame rate got weird there for a second. I don't know what that was all about. Anyway, I wanted to do another video where I talk about experiences and stuff because I did that a couple. I don't know how long ago was that. Let's look at the channel. Let's see here. That was a total of, drumroll please, 3 weeks ago. Feels like 3 months ago, but that was 3 weeks ago. Not even that long ago. Crazy, right? Um, I recorded a video while I was on my walk around the neighborhood trying to get some exercise and stuff and trying to get out there and stuff. Get a little exercise going. I tend to walk super far, like I'll go like 3 or 4 miles just on a walk, sometimes 5, because I don't like running, so I just walk extra far to kind of make up for the fact that I'm not running. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a few things in this video. So in my streams, and I always say this, I make a lot of jokes about things, and that's kind of more my lighthearted self, just having fun, enjoying the moment. But I want this channel to be a few different things, and one of those things I want this channel to be is a place where if anyone is struggling or if someone's going through a hard time, that they know there's someone out there they can relate to, you know? Um, and I want every viewer on this channel, no matter where they are, what walk of life, what they've been through, whatever, to kind of know that this channel is a place where you can come and just decompress for a little bit. Maybe you had a tough day at work, maybe you're having a breakup, I don't know, whatever you're dealing with, it's your problem, whatever it is, but just know, this channel is a place for that. In a lot of my streams, I talk about how much I admire my dad and how much I love my dad a lot. And he actually encouraged me to make this channel two different things mainly, right? And the first thing was the streaming, right? The having fun, gaming, doing all that stuff, but then also trying to help people, which is kind of like my secondary goal, I guess, trying to share about my experiences and talk about the things I've been through and kind of try and resonate with people that might be going through similar pains. Um, I'm a firm believer in that you really don't know what anyone's going through until you actually listen, you know? Um, I mean, if you have empathy, you can kind of piece things together, but until you really hear it from them, as someone that has tried to improve his empathy in his life and has been tried to be an empathetic person, whether I've done that or not, who knows? I've tried to do it, but um, there are moments where I reach a point when I'm talking to certain people where I can't just assume anymore. I have to get the information straight from the source. And what I mean by that is you can only guess so much. No matter how intelligent you are, no matter how insightful you are, you can only really do so much guesswork until you need to know the truth behind the situation. So, what a story I wanted to tell you guys about today. And when I ended my stream, I was telling the story about my grandpa. But I wanted to pivot from that a little bit. Because, like I said, I'm always going to glaze my grandpa. I'm going to take every opportunity to carry on his memory in my life. And in as long as I'm alive, I'll be doing that. So there's plenty of that to come, but I don't want to talk about that today. Today I wanted to talk about something I feel like a lot of young men and women, old men and women, whatever, whoever out there unfortunately has to deal with this can relate to, and that's loneliness. You know, um, the thing is, guys, I mean, I know I probably don't seem like it, and I probably, I'm very upbeat in my streams. I'm very upbeat in this video. I'm very like, joking around and having fun and having a good laugh. But the thing is, loneliness is something I've struggled with and still struggle with. But here's the thing, guys. It's been that way for a long time. And what I'm trying to imply is that there's really two major outcomes you can get from extreme isolation and loneliness. Being cynical or trying to find a way out, right? Those are your two kind of options. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones, but those are your two main options, right? And for me personally, you know, the way I was raised, the environment I grew up in didn't give me any confidence to actually go talk to girls I was interested in or, actually do any of that stuff. Um, and I still tried, I definitely tried, but it always felt like I gave off the wrong impression or the wrong, whatever. I don't know. There was really no way for me to know what I was doing was the right way to do it. In my head, I've always been like, what's the perfect way to go about this, right? But really, it's just trial and error. But it's a lot of error. Um, when I was in middle school, and that doesn't really count because it's middle school, but that was like in eighth grade was like the first time I started to kind of like become interested in girls, right? As most kids back then, that's kind of the age range, right? And I noticed something about myself that was interesting. Even looking back on it now, it's interesting that a lot of the other kids in my grade, it kind of felt like, I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I'm so like deep. That's not my point. But I felt like back then, at least a lot of people I was around, it kind of felt like a lot of what they were feeling and saying about what they were feeling was kind of surface level. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like, oh, she's so hot, or he's so hot, or whatever. And it's like it just didn't think that way. I don't know. Like for me, it was always kind of like, I mean, of course I thought that, but like that wasn't my first initial reaction, right? For me, growing up with loneliness, it wasn't that I didn't express or think things normal people do. I'm a normal person, right? Like I'm not special, right? I'm just a normal guy, right? But I think the difference between me and them in that context, in my experience with loneliness, was that I didn't think I was allowed to feel things normal humans were allowed to feel. And that might be confusing to some of you, right? Like, well, why wouldn't you be? Well, without getting into too much of the weeds, my whole life, unfortunately, when it comes to things like love and romance, there is very few people in my life and in my environment back then that did it successfully, right? A lot of them tried. A lot of them really, really tried. They tried their best, but they messed up a lot. And when I was a kid, all I could think to myself was, I don't want that. Like I just, and again, nobody wants that, but like, I was terrified, right? I was like, oh my goodness, like, what if I get in a relationship and it doesn't work out? That was my biggest fear. It was like, what if I fall in love with someone and my loneliness is gone, or I make a bunch of friends and then I don't get to keep them, or I get a girlfriend and she doesn't stay. It didn't come from a place of possessiveness. It came from a place of fear, not wanting the good times to end, not wanting the happy times to stop. Because growing up, I dealt with a lot of unhappy times, but there were moments, periods of happiness that felt so real I never wanted them to end, you know? And that's the thing about happiness, it can't last forever, That's just the truth. It comes in waves, you know? It doesn't have to end poorly, but it also doesn't always end beautifully. And that's a reality that's always been hard for me to sit with, because for me, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. All I've ever wanted is the Disney fairy tale ending when it comes to romance. That we live happily ever after, And as a grown man, a lot of people look at you, and even as a guy, before I was a grown man, a lot of people look at you and, oh, that's stupid. You don't understand how real life works, or they kind of give you, like, if they don't say that, they kind of give you that attitude, right? I never understood that. I mean, it hurt my feelings. They thought that, but like logically, that never clicked in my brain, because in my head, it's like, isn't that what we all want? Isn't that the goal at the end of the day? So back to what I was saying, I'm not cynical. The reason I'm not cynical is not because I'm not angry, not because it doesn't hurt, but because like I don't hate people. I I don't. No matter how much shit I've been through, no matter how many times I've been hurt, or who has put me through what, I mean, maybe I have moments of hate, where it's like, oh, that person did this to me and I'm so angry, I just want to, bam, and but like it never lasts. It doesn't. And sometimes I feel like I've been times where it has, right? But it always went away at some point, right? Um, And I straddled the line for a long time with this loneliness stuff. I used to think to myself, am I a good person or a bad person? Which one am I? To me, there was no in between, right? You either were or you weren't, right? There was no moral gray area because in my head, if you weren't a good person, but you weren't necessarily a bad person, you were still a bad person, right? That's kind of, and in my head, that's kind of still how it works because then you're just kind of a, I don't know, they're just kind of an in between, and that's not really good or bad. I don't know. That's something I've struggled with. Um, but I wholeheartedly believe that goodness is based on actions, not thoughts and feelings or issues or problems or depression or things people have been through. And I've seen a lot of content creators on this platform talk about loneliness and mental health stuff, and and I'm not blaming them for this. I understand where they're coming from, but a lot of them seem very cynical. A lot of them seem very like angry at the world, and I get it, man. I do. I really do. The reality is I can't let myself be that way because I don't think I'd be alive if I was that way. It's so easy to just cave in all that shit. It's so easy to just give up, to be like, to just fall into a pit of anger and rage, and especially on the internet, man. Like sometimes you gotta get the fuck off the internet, bro. Sometimes my friends tell me that, like stop being on Instagram all the time. Like, all right, like, you know, really, YouTube is where I can be my best self. I feel like my most authentic self. I try to do that in person, but I feel like people don't always understand, or it comes off as like overbearing, even though I'm not trying to be. I've had a lot of like social interactions. It's not like I've been a complete shut in or anything. So, but again, it's straddling the line. They say loneliness is something you can feel even in a room full of people, and I've lived long enough and been through enough stuff to know that that is absolutely true. But for me, it's been both. Right? When I lived in New Mexico after I graduated high school, I moved out with some family out there, and they'd always have these big events, these big parties, and have all these people over. And I tell you what, I never felt connected to not one of them motherfuckers the whole time. I tried, but I would just sit there and I didn't know what to do. I'd just be like, what do I even do? What do I say? You know? I was fresh out of high school too. I was 18, perfect time to ask people about what their plans for the future are. I didn't. And it wasn't necessarily because I didn't want to, I was cynical. I hated other people because in my head, they were nothing like me. And they could never understand me and my pain. But in a way, that's kind of arrogant to assume other people don't understand your pain because it assumes they don't have their own, you know? And pain isn't something that can be measured by like, it's not a competition, right? Like a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, I've been through this. But, have you guys ever met those people? I've met someone like this. It was one of my friends, old friends, like partners. Like every time I tell her something like, yeah, I went through this tough thing as a kid because someone would ask and it would be brought up. It's like, oh, that's nothing. You don't even know I went through this, and it's just like, really? It's not a competition, man. If it's bad to you, it's bad to you. Like if it was bad enough to hurt you, then that's all that matters. That deserves validation to some extent. That at the very least deserves understanding. Some people don't get that though, and most people do. I feel like, but a lot of people don't. And I'd be connected to all these people. I'd be around all these people, but I wouldn't feel shit. And then before I knew it, I was alone and had no one because I stopped trying. I stopped going out. I stopped doing things, and I stopped putting myself out there. And this is back like when I wasn't dealing with so many health issues like I am now. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm like dying or anything, or like I'm dealing with so many health issues I can't leave the house. I mean, I can. It's fine. I just got a job. Things are looking up. But physically, my health is not great right now. I'm not gonna lie. I ate like shit for a lot of my life, and it's really starting. It really caught up with me. I had fatty liver, even at my skinny body weight. That's kind of surprising. It was very high, and it's come down like half of what it was at because I've started eating ridiculously healthy compared to how I used to eat. Um, I mean, yeah, like I said in my stream, guys, I would straight up eat 2 Big Macs a day, some pizza rolls, Oreo cakesters. I'd sometimes get a McFlurry to go with that from McDonald's when I'd pick up my Big Macs, the no onions, extra cheese, extra sauce. Like it was ridiculous. And I wasn't used to eating like that my whole life. Because you have to remember, like I did martial arts, like I worked out and like did that stuff. But I would always exercise and not gain any like actual muscle mass, and I would ask myself why. Like I'd be strong and toned and like in shape, but I would never gain muscle mass. I'd ask, why is that? Because I wasn't eating protein, guys. I just ate whatever I wanted because it was, in my head, I'm working so hard I should be able to eat whatever I want with no consequences. That was kind of how I thought. And eventually it caught up with me. And it's not so much the food, it was also a lot of the medications I was on that messed me up. You know, this is the thing. Like when you feel lonely, you feel disconnected from everything, and it leads to things like this. Um, and also, you can't just listen to people that don't know what they're talking about. Granted, when you're young, you don't know any better. I mean, guys, I had been on medications ever since I was like an 8-year-old boy. I'm surprised I didn't grow up like mentally completely just deranged or with like some sort of like severely untreatable mental condition. Like it's actually impressive that didn't happen to me. I think for someone that was on as many drugs as he was, I turned out pretty okay mentally. Um, but I noticed when I started getting off of all of them, and recently I got off one that I'd been on for a very, very long time that was really affecting my health. And I ended up in the hospital because of like all this like withdrawal symptoms I didn't know I was going to get. And I'm finally now just starting to get better. And I finally just got off the last one. Like last night, last one was the last time, and I don't remember the last time I slept so well. I just don't. Like I don't remember the last time I slept so well in my whole like last 3 years. Because you don't sleep well on those things. You just sleep. It's not a rest. You're just like for the last 3 years my brain was just on autopilot. I don't even know how I held a job and did so well at it all those years on it, you know. My brain was just on autopilot. I was just going through the motions. I didn't do anything more than I had to, just work, home, eat, watch anime, go to sleep. I didn't do content creation back then because I wasn't motivated. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to learn to edit. All this stuff I'm doing now, I think it, in large in part is because I got off those shitty medications. And I'm not saying like if you have medications that you need to be on, I'm not saying like, oh, don't take them. But I'm saying like if you're an adult and you're questioning that like, okay, maybe I should really like get a second opinion, please do, guys, because and I'm not a medical professional. I'm just talking about my own experiences, guys. I spent my whole life telling me you need this. You need it. And I really didn't, man. I really didn't. I mean, like physical problems, if you have heart problems, stomach problems, throat problems, kidney problems. I mean, take medications for that, obviously, right? I'm not even saying don't take the ones for your brain, but I'm saying just be very, very careful before you do. Make sure you are absolutely certain it's what you need. Because the reality is, when you're in that vulnerable state, sometimes you'll just kind of go along with it. And I don't blame any. I did the same thing. Difference was I was a child. I didn't know any better, and I grew into an adult that just assumed it was okay to keep taking that shit. And for some people, maybe it is, but for me, it wasn't. And it really poisoned me. It damaged me. It made it so I couldn't eat a lot of the things I was used to eating, and I couldn't do a lot of things I was used to doing. And I'm still dealing with the health problems. I'm still getting over the effects of all that garbage, you know? Because there's always a trade off, guys. When it comes to health, you got to take your health seriously. And that means don't eat McDonald's every day like I was, you know? Just take care of yourselves. And that's what it all ties into, right? That's what loneliness is. It's a feeling because we can take care of ourselves, but at the end of the day, it's like we want someone on equal footing that's going to be there for us, you know? I mean, there's family, there's friends, depending on their situation. If you don't have that, God forbid, hopefully that's not your situation, but then you have at least your own reliable self. But at the end of the day, we need human connection, guys. And this is a struggle that I've dealt with a lot of my life. I mean, and it hurts. I'm not gonna lie. It does. Because, you know, but I'm not mad. I couldn't be mad. I'm not even I don't know, I'm not even disappointed. I'm just lost, you know? And this channel is an outlet, but it's and a hobby, but it's also a passion. It's a version of self-expression that I can use to do something about my existence that's more than just, the things I'm used to doing, I guess. Right? I saw this one YouTuber. I don't know who he is. I hope he sees this video. I saw him on Instagram. I really wish I remembered his name. I'll try and find it. I think his name is his first name is Jeremy. I think that is. But You guys might have seen this clip on Instagram, but it's just this absolute legend, just this absolute brave man holding up his phone. He's got tears in his eyes, and he's basically saying that he's the only person in his family that's still alive, and he's making this video as proof that he exists. And I remember going to the comments and just seeing the overwhelming support for that guy, and I was just like, my goodness, that is just a beautiful thing, you know? And that's like on the very extreme case, you know, not I mean, a lot of people are in that situation, but that's not most people's situation, right? But there are people out there that deal with stuff like that, and we need to be like, at least in my experience, I want to be kind to people like that, right? I want them to know they're not alone, you know? And I'm not saying that's the threshold, right? Like, you got to lose all your family to know you're not alone, but like, you're not alone, you know? And I used to think those are just words, platitudes that adults gave kids, that other adults gave me as a young adult to basically shut me up so I wouldn't keep complaining. But I never really thought behind those words. Because guys, the thing is like life changes so quickly and things can switch on a dime. Things can switch like that. You know, I always thought that like life had to build up to things. That things had to take like 10 years for anything to pay off, but it's really not like that all the time. It is sometimes, but not all the time. You know, a lot of times things kind of just happen, you know, when you least expect it too, right? That's why when people say like don't go looking for relationships but keep your heart open and stuff, they're not saying like expect people to show up at your door, but it's like when you're already doing the things you're doing and putting yourself out there trying to get a job or getting a job or going to church or you know being social in any way you physically can if you're in the position to do so or having any sort of outlet that you're around other people, you have the ability for things to change just so quickly without you even knowing, you know, and then it just happens and you're like, whoa, what even just happened right now? Of course, this is something I'm still going through, so I can't completely vouch for that's 100% true, but in my experience, the times where the craziest things have happened that I didn't expect were always the times I thought nothing like that would ever happen for me. That's at least how I experienced it, you know. Um I mean, yeah, it's tough, you know, and life is one of those things that like it's almost ridiculous how lonely we have to feel. You know, in a world full of people, in a universe so vast, the fact that we even feel alone is crazy, you know, when you think about it, because ideally there should be someone out there for everyone. But sometimes it's like trying to find. You remember like the gold Lego character that was like five in the world of the in every little pack, and you had to like search everywhere, and you had to be like a millionaire to buy everything to find it. Like sometimes that's what it feels like trying to find that person. You know, it's not even a needle in a haystack because the needle is like actually easier to find, to be honest. And you know, you're trying to find that person that is right for you. You know, and a lot of people find that person through God, through faith, through work, through events, but a lot of people don't. Not ever necessarily, but a lot of people it takes them a long time. You know, I had family members and people I knew who didn't find their soulmate until they're in their 40s. And you know, when I was like 17 and 16, there was a part of me that was like, "Dear God, you failed." And that was arrogant of me. I was like, "Dear God, how could you get to this age and that's your life?" And then I grew up and I realized that that wasn't anger I was feeling, that was fear. I don't want to be 43 and have to wait that long, you know? I mean, there's so much of life you miss out on, you know. I've talked about this a lot with family members and they're kind of like, you know, "Oh, you're young, you got time." And what I always tell them is like time isn't infinite. Even with heaven existing, even with the possibility and likelihood of us going somewhere after we die, this is the only now we ever get. I mean, once you're in heaven, that ideally, right? If you believe in that, right? Let's say you go to heaven, let's say God's like, you know, come right on in. Like as beautiful and as great as that is, that's forever. You know, you're never going to want or feel or need for anything again. So that's obviously that's the goal and that's beautiful in its own way. And that's why so many people are drawn to the faith. But like, this is the only time we get to live in reality, right? And it's almost like a fleeting dream, right? You wake up one day and you graduate high school. You wake up one day and you graduate middle school. You know, I was talking about this with my mom the other day. I was like, "Mom, I'll wake up and I'll be 28 years old." And I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I want you to figure it out. I'm sure by now you have. You can just do simple math just from my streams. Um, but I told her that, and she's like, "Oh, but you're not even there yet." And I'm like, "Mom, not that long ago, it felt like I was 17, even though that was a while ago." And obviously, I'm not one of those people. It's like rush time and don't stay in the present, obviously. But my God, things pass so much quicker than I've had the luxury and privilege of getting to be around a lot of old heads, a lot of old people in my life, grandmas, grandpas, older people, and they all say the same thing. It goes so much faster than you think it does. Now that doesn't mean live in fear, right? That doesn't mean like just be worried, but that means really appreciate every moment. And if you're feeling in the moment like, dang it, this is tough, like don't listen to people that are like, you got time. I mean, I feel like people think that's comforting, but in reality, it just feels like they're just putting off what you want in life, you know? Obviously, you do have time if you're young, right? That is the truth. But that's not what you want to hear in the moment. I didn't want to hear that shit when I was 11. I didn't want to hear that shit when I was 17. I want to hear that shit as an adult. Like, I mean, it's nice, but it's like you're sitting there and you're like, well, what about now? What about everything I'm trying to do now? And it's tough, right? Because loneliness sucks, man. It sucks. It straight up does. And every time I see people online being like, loneliness is the greatest, man, it's like I'm not trying to be a jackass, but I kind of feel like they're lying. Like I feel like they're at least lying a little bit. Um, or maybe they've just become so numb to the pain. I don't know. Again, maybe it's that cynical side of it. Since I'm not cynical about it anymore, I'm just honest. I don't like it. But I don't think any normal person does, right? It's something you have to work on, keep pushing forward and try to move forward. And it's a constant process. You just can't give up, you know? I mean, guys, I don't think I know. I think probably 95% of people I've ever met had screwed up childhoods. I'm going to be honest. To some extent or another. I met maybe like two or three people my whole life that had like pretty ideal childhoods. And even if they didn't have like any emotional problems, they had pretty bad physical ones, like bad physical health problems. So there's always a trade-off, right? There's always a catch. And it's weird that we live in a world full of people who get it but that don't at the same time. Like what why? I mean, we should live in a world full of people where if you share how you feel, it's like, "Oh, I totally get it," but no, a lot of people don't do that. One time, I'll give you a story here. One time I turned 18, or when I turned 18, I went to church with my aunt and uncle, and they're like, "Oh, hey, in this video, I'll just call myself Hunter, right? That's my real name. There's no Mortis one in this video. It's just Hunter. So, hey, Hunter, go to the adult group. Go talk to them and go have a chat. And they've been through some stuff. They talk about like how to connect with God. So I'm gonna be honest. My kind of expectation was to walk over there and have like a really like emotionally deep. Like we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about how God has helped us and how we're gonna move forward. And I walked over to that group of like, I don't know, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, late 20-year-olds. Mind you, I'm basically 18. I just turned into an adult at this point. And if you can even call it that. But legally, I guess so. So I sit down, and back then, I was like, I'm not as nice as I am now. Like, back then, I was kind of a jackass. I'm not going to lie. Like, I had a chip on my shoulder. I got into like a lot of kind of fights I didn't want to be in. I got my ass beat, sometimes beat ass. It was stupid. I got in a lot of like arguments and shit with people. I hated it looking back on it, but it is what it is. And also, I trained a lot in boxing at the time. Um, well, actually, no, sorry, I was better when I trained in boxing. This is before that, because when you train in martial arts, you kind of switch your whole narrative of that shit. But before that, I was kind of a jackass. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm sitting down and I'm trying to be open minded. And everyone's kind of going around, and there's like the leader of the group, who's like this woman in her like late 20s, early 30s. She looked like, and we're all kind of talking, and she's like, oh, anyway, let's go around the group and say our names. And so they get to me and like share something tough you've been going through. And so I'm at like, okay, so she's like here, like say she's here, I'm like here. I'm at like the like complete like 12 o'clock, I think it would be the term, from her. So I'm like, how would you say it? Like horizontally in front of her. Or no, that's vertically? I don't know. It's difficult with depth and perception, but you get what I mean. So there's all people around me, right? And they're going around the circle. And in my head, I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna connect with people, man. We're gonna talk about some deep shit, and I'm not gonna feel so alone anymore. So we're going around the circle, and this is and not to shit on the people there, but this is literally all I heard. Right? Tell us something tough. Well, I don't know. It's my car broke down. Anyway, my kid's basketball game was pretty cool, and it was like that for everyone until it got to me. And I know, and nowadays I wouldn't have cared, right? I would have been like, ah, it sucks, man. I hate it when cars break down. Luckily, my car hasn't yet. Fingers crossed. Um, but I get it. But I'm gonna be honest. Back then, I felt insulted. I'm not gonna lie. I felt like they were just lying to my face. I felt like they were just hiding information because they didn't like. We were in a sharing circle, right? This was supposed to be like a time of like deep reflection in my mind, and nobody wanted to reflect. Everyone. It's part of the reason why I struggled going to church for so long because I felt like nobody wanted to be honest about what they were feeling. That they just like they were worried God was going to judge them if they said something that was a little bit like like civil. I don't know. So that's how I felt. So when it got to me and my side of the circle, I'm gonna be honest. I was a complete dickhead to everyone. You know, I got in such a soapbox. I literally started being such an arrogant asshole to everyone in that group because I knew they weren't gonna do anything about it. So I was just like, I was just pissed, you know. And I straight up was being an egotistical little dipshit. I was straight up being like, you know what? You guys keep talking about your cars and your kids' games, but what's the most pain any of you have ever been through? I literally said that. I actually said that to them. That's some of the most screwed up shit you could tell anyone. But I said it. And I don't think I said it like necessarily because I didn't think they'd been through anything bad. I think it's because I wanted connection in that moment. I felt that that's what I was going to get. But then it was and that wasn't the first time something like that happened, but that was the first time something like that happened when I had turned 18, right? And I was just in my own head. I was mad, I was angry, I was cynical. I was like none of these people get it, you know. I'm sitting here in this group. I haven't even said anything yet, but I was wanting to be like, yeah, you know, here's some past experiences and here's how I want to move forward in my walk with God. But it just felt like everyone was trying to avoid that. So I felt lonely. I'm going to be honest, I felt lonely and it pissed me off because it felt like none of them were trying as hard as I was. You know, that's kind of how it felt to me. Maybe, you know, I'm sure they were in their own way, but I didn't see it like that back then, you know? So that was tough for me. I'm not going to lie. That was tough. And loneliness has kind of loneliness has kind of been like a creeping shadow in my life for a long time. It's not always there. Well, actually, it is always there, but it doesn't always show itself. You know, I can distract myself. I can forget about it. I can do things that make me not think about it. But once it's there, it doesn't go away until it's forced to go away. At least in my experience, the only times I haven't felt lonely in my life are when I've been connected deeply with other people. I don't know if that's how it is for everybody, but that's how it is for me at least. You know, for me, it's like I, I don't want to sound like an asshole when I say this, but like any superficial connection is kind of a drag for me. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'll do it, right? You know, but like you know, because obviously most of the connections in life will be superficial, right? I can do it. It's not like something that's hard for me. But like the second I see someone I feel like I can have a real connection with, oh my god, my whole world lights up. Everything changes, you know, in my head. Like I start being like, oh, we should play this game. If you game, we should, you know, oh, let me know your favorite hobbies. We should talk about that, right? Because I'm interested in other people, right? And I like to hear what they like, and I like to hear about their lives. And I don't know, like sometimes some people aren't like that, and it's tough for me because it's made me feel more lonely because you know all I've ever really wanted is for people to feel connected to me when if they want it. You know, if they don't, whatever, that's their choice. That's okay. I respect that. But sometimes people come into your life and they seem like they want you or want to be with you or want to be connected to you, and then they just don't. And that's I've never understood that because I don't feel like I've ever done that to anyone, at least very much. You know, every person I've been super close with, I mean, looking back on it, I don't think I've ever left them or left them behind. You know, not if I could help it. Not if I didn't give it my damnedest first to make sure I did everything in my power to make sure that that didn't happen. It's only when I had no other choice did that happen, right? But then when it happened to me, I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. You know, I just felt so alone and confused. I didn't know what to do. And sometimes I still don't know what to do because that hasn't happened a lot recently, but it has happened. You know, when I moved to New Mexico, there was this family friend who I was close with. Um, and it was that was soul crushing for me because I'll be honest, like she was the only person I thought I would be close to like the way I was with my girlfriend. Obviously, I didn't want to get any ideas without any like sort of like, you know, okay, like actual confirmation, but I thought it was going that way. And I wasn't hurt when it wasn't, that wasn't the problem. Eventually, I confessed to her and told her how I felt, and she just simply stared at me in the eyes and said, I could never view you that way. And my response, because I'm not a cynical person, is I smiled and I said, it's okay. That's kind of what I thought you'd say. I just kind of chuckled and laughed it off. And she was like offended for some reason. I don't know. I still don't understand women sometimes. I'm not trying to be a jackass. I just don't. Like, it's not just women. I just don't understand people a lot of times, man. I try my best. I really do. But it's confusing. It was hard. You know, we had been through a lot and things were tough. But I worked through it the best way I knew how. And I still felt lonely, you know? Because after everything ended with her, I mean, she said so many things to me that I thought meant something, but I realized they kind of didn't. And I don't mean like flirtatious things. Like one time I remember she was like say something you like about yourself, and I was like, oh, I'm tall. And then she's like, say some more things. And I wasn't like trying to be cynical or like pity myself. I legitimately couldn't think of anything else. Literally nothing. No one had ever asked me that question before. Not even people that loved me had asked me that question before. So I was at a loss. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know. No idea. I don't know. So, yeah, it was complicated. And I went through a lot of different things. And loneliness was something that I experienced a lot and still do in my life. And I guess this video is an attempt for people to understand they're not alone and that none of us are, you know, that we all deserve that special someone in our life. And we all deserve to be connected to others, you know. And it's tough for us because I feel like a lot of us have spent, especially if you're like me, you've spent a lot of your life blaming yourself and getting mad at things you couldn't control, you know? And the reality is if you do that too much, you lose touch with reality, you know? You lose touch with what the actual goal of life is, which is to connect, right? I mean, people will tell you all sorts of shit, but that's the real goal, you know? At least maybe not the only goal, but the number one goal I'd say is to connect. Because like, you know, what's the point otherwise, you know? What's the point if you're on the top of the mountain but there's no one there with you, you know? And you know, it's tough for me, you know, because and this video is getting long, but you know, I want to really level with you guys, you know, because I'm not going to make these videos all the time, so I don't want to limit them to only like 15 minutes. Um, but I'm going to try and make this under an hour at least. But I want you guys to know that like there is always something on the horizon, you know, even when you don't expect it. It's usually when you don't expect it that the really good things happen. But I'm not gonna lie to you, life is painful, you know, and I'm sure you're all well aware of that. But just in case you need a reminder, you know, I mean, it's weird, you know, because I don't know. It's like when it comes to loneliness, for so long I thought it was something that I had to carry by myself. You know, I thought it was like I am this way. I have to be this way. There's no, yeah, I was literally that anime protagonist of like, no one would ever love me anyway, so why even bother, you know? It's just like, I don't know. It's just such a whack way to view the world, you know? Like, and sometimes I have to remind myself that that is not still the truth, you know? Because the reality is if you're like me and you don't have anyone telling you these things, that is, you know, if you have family and friends, sure, but if you don't have like a special someone like telling you like you're a good person or whatever, sometimes you tend to forget it, you know, sometimes, or like you know, when you're trying your best and no one sees it, you know, like a lot of my life growing up, you know, you have no reason to believe you're actually doing well at all. You have no reason to believe that you're giving it your best shot or even doing a good job at anything, right? You just think you're just a failure that's doing nothing, no matter what you're actually doing, good or bad, you know. um and that's the real crux of loneliness, is like it's one of those things that like until you can get a handle on it and try and negate it through human connection, because that's really the really only way you can, deep down we all know that. um you know, it's one of those things that like you're just going to always be convinced that you're not good enough for anyone else, No matter how much you improve, no matter how hard you try, or how many times you fall and fail, you're always going to believe that. I mean, I know I have, and I do, and I did. It's gotten a lot better nowadays, I'll be honest. It's gotten a lot better. You know, I've been to a lot of different counselors, and I've seen a lot of different people, and I've done a lot of different things to fix it, but it took a lot of effort, you know. And if you're like me, you're someone that, like, when someone in your real life comes up to you and is genuinely kind and genuinely cares about you, I mean, you give that person the world, like, straight up. I don't think there's anything, if you're like me, there's anything you wouldn't do for that person, you know? I mean, even if it's not necessarily in a romantic way, but even if it is in a romantic way, oh, even better, you know? You would listen to any story, take them anywhere they needed to go. They're sick, you'd take care of them. They need help with something, you'd go help them even if you weren't qualified to do it, you know? At least that's how I imagine it, right? Um, and I would hope someone would do that for me, you know. And for all of you guys out there that are experiencing this, you know. The reality is I have a lot of friends, right? Not a lot of friends, but I have friends, right? But you know, and like I said in a lot of my videos, you know, I have been alone for a long time, and that's no one's problem but my own to solve. So I will keep working on it. You best you believe. But I want you guys to know that, like, because I know there's people watching this that are 100% going to relate to what I'm saying. Hopefully not all of you, because that would make me feel bad. But even if that is the case, then all right. You know, this is a channel of like-minded individuals that can collectively get together and just watch me play some video games, watch me yap, you know, and then we can all have a good time and talk about it, you know. And that's the reality, you know. If you're lonely and if you're going through something, please reach out to someone if it gets bad enough, you know. Um cuz my goodness, like I don't know, like even for someone that grew up in the exact shoes that I was in, I was so self-aware it was strange. Like I was just so like I'm not trying to say like I knew anymore, but I was just like aware of all this stuff, but at the same time aware of nothing, you know. I was self-aware but understood nothing. Right? I was like, "Oh, this is happening," but I didn't know what any of it meant, you know. Um so anyway, it's just something I want to keep working on, and I want everyone to know that I care about all of you, you know. You're all welcome on this channel. And I'm just doing this for the love of the game, right? Like straight up. Like I don't care if I ever make $1 out of this. You know, I just like making content. So, you know, it is what it is, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Um, and before I go, I want to tell one story. Um, and you know, if you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you tuning in and watching this 45-minute. This man, if only I could make my streams this as long. I do make them way longer than this, but like if only I could make them this long without getting as tired. For some reason, this requires zero effort for me to do compared to streaming. But whatever. Um, the story I'd like to tell you is the story of a young man, well, a little boy, who grew up going to church with his grandfather, who he lost at too young of an age, and was lost for a very long time without him. Um, this little boy was me, of course. And as a kid, unfortunately, my parents separated. And it wasn't like super crazy or anything, but they were disconnected. I ended up moving to California with my mom's side of the family. And, you know, we had our differences and we worked them out over time. But I had my grandfather for most of that early development years. And, you know, I was, I don't think there was many days I didn't spend with him, you know. And we went to church. We had potlucks at said church. To be honest, it wasn't even so much about like the religious doctrine. It was just about being connected to God and being connected with community. That's how I viewed it, at least. I didn't really care so much about like the scripture, like the specific this. Like it was more just about we're going to pray, we're going to be close to God, we're going to have faith, and we're going to have each other. That's how it was for me, at least. And I think I was really blessed that that was my first experience with the faith, right? So anyway, um, you know, this little kid who's me in this story did a lot of different things with his grandpa. but he was also going through a really hard time because he had family members who were struggling. He was being put in awkward and tough positions that his grandpa and dad had often had to protect him from, especially at that young age. So my grandfather, eventually everything got sorted. I moved back in with him, and we all kind of everything was cool. Um, him and my grandma, at least in their house, and so we spent every day together. He took me to fairs, he took me to festivals, and even when I was dealing with a tough time, since he was a doctor, he took me to therapy and sat in on my sessions, you know, to make sure that I was getting the best possible care and treatment I could get, because that's how much he loved me. So, when I was around 10, and he was a big dude, like 6'3", like close to 250 pounds. He was a big guy. And my grandma was kind of helping him walk. And I had known that something was up for a long time. And I remember seeing him, walking up to him. He's kind of like in his, gym shorts, and he's looking very like sweaty and unwell. I walked up to him and I asked, "Grandpa, what's going on? Are you okay?" And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "I'm just in a lot of pain, buddy." And I'll never forget those words. For the rest of my life, I'll never forget them. Never will. My hope in making this content, and most of it's going to be goofing, playing video games, having fun, but my goal in these videos, whenever I do them, is for you guys to know how deeply some people do actually care. And if you don't cherish that, I did, right? I did. I absolutely did with him. Didn't make it hurt any less when he was gone. I can only imagine how much more it would have hurt for me if I was selfish, if I didn't cherish everything he did for me, if I was distant. I don't think I would have been able to live with myself, to be honest, or live. The reality is, after he was gone, I had no one. I had no male mentors in my life, and for a developing kid, that's horrible, you know. And I'll get into some other stories later, um, but things were tough, and I was going through a lot, and there's a lot of personal things I'm not going to get into, right? But for all intents and purposes, I just want you guys to know, some of you might ask, like, well, you love your dad so much. Where was he? Um, I'm not going to get into really, really personal stuff, right? Because that's my business and my family's business. But without giving too much away, he was trying his best, and circumstances made it so that essentially he was being kind of lied to about my situation. And he lived so far away that it wasn't easy for him to actually just kind of like, he wanted to respect my mom's wishes, right? She wanted to raise me, he didn't want to force her not to. No one was wrong, no one was right. It was just the decision that was made, right? So that was the thing, right? But after my grandfather passed, I think I entered 6th grade, and I got bullied a lot, and a lot of shit happened that I hated, and he wasn't there. He wasn't there, and I had never felt so alone. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, talk about loneliness. That's the loneliest I ever felt. I didn't have him. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't rely on any teachers. They didn't understand, you know. And I did have my grandma, and that did make up for most of it. But then, she had to move because we had another family member who was sick, and she needed to help them. And that's what mothers do. So she did that. So loneliness became very something I was familiar with. Because of the experiences I had with my grandpa at a very young age, I developed a very sincere sense of what I think connection should be, right? Since my connection with him was so deep and just, I don't know, like personal, in my head, I thought things like family, friends, partner should all be like that. That's how I grew up believing that it was supposed to be like. And I think it kind of is, but like now I have a little bit more of like, okay, not everyone's like that. You have to find people who are like that. But for the longest time, I thought everyone by default was supposed to be like that, and I was confused why people weren't like that. I mean, there wasn't anything I didn't share with my grandpa. So in my head, Why couldn't I do that with other people that I trusted? You know, that's where I was coming from. So I want you guys to know that loneliness is very real, and take mental health very seriously. Take your mental health very seriously, you know. Do whatever you can to help yourself first. Because, like they say on planes, you know, put the breath mask over your face first and then help the others. It's not because you're being selfish, it's because if you pass out, who's going to put the mask on the kid? You know? And that's life, too. It's the same rules apply, right? If you don't take care of your mental health first, you can't really take care of anyone else's. You know, that's just reality. I've been told so many times by adults I have trusted in my life that, like, in order to love others, you have to love yourself. And for the first time in a while, I've actually started doing that, and I hope all you guys can start doing that too. Or if you have already, great, that's good. I'm happy for you. But it's a constant process. You're never just gonna reach a point like I love myself and that's it. You know, you're gonna do something stupid, and you're gonna be like, do I really love myself? But it'll get better. It will. Um. So anyway, I just want y'all to know that, and I just want you guys to know that I am someone who does not like the feeling of being alone at all ever. Being alone is okay, right? I don't want to constantly be surrounded by other people. Feeling alone, however, I hate that feeling. I always have. I mean, that's why I stream gaming, because if I just played it by myself and just sat there, I wouldn't have any fun doing it. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't. That's why before I streamed, all I ever did was play online games with my friends, because I could not have fun just sitting by myself playing games in silence. I just couldn't. I felt like I wanted to talk and say things. So that's why I've started streaming these last few weeks, you know, this last month. And it's been a lot of fun, and I intend to keep doing it. So sorry, I'm got hiccups. Um, I'm gonna make this video exactly an hour. We're gonna make it right to the hour mark. Let's go. um, but like I was saying earlier, I feel like there's a lot of people on this platform that talk about loneliness, but don't give a positive spin at the end. You know, don't give a hey, it can all work out if you let it. You know, if you have faith, if you give it your best shot, right? I'm not saying it will, but it can. And isn't that worth something? You know, I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to give up. I mean, I want to do it a lot still, but I mean, like, what would be the point of doing that after all my grandfather did for me, you know? And you all have someone like that in your life, maybe multiple someones, to be honest. My grandfather was just the first one to do that for me, so he holds a special place in my heart. I mean, guys, he passed away like, I don't know, 13 years ago, so still doesn't hurt any less. Still don't feel any less lonely without him here. I mean, I believe in God in the afterlife. I believe he went there to heaven. I still don't feel any less lonely about it. I'm just happy to know that things are okay. And ultimately that's what I want to do on this channel. Is whenever there's a tough topic, I don't want to leave you on like, you know, some bullshit of like, and that's just how it is. Depression. All right, guys, see you later. Like, what the hell is the point of that, right? There's enough of that shit in the world. So, you know what? I'm going to leave you off on a positive note, all right? I'm going to leave you off on a positive note. And what that positive note is I don't know you. I'm never going to know you personally. That's fine. I don't need to. But I love all you. Okay? And there are people out there that do, that really do know you and who do love you. And if there aren't any, keep going because you will find someone who does. There's been moments in my life where I've had no one, where I've lived in halfway houses. Somehow things, with enough perseverance and enough not giving up, things tended to kind of manage to work out one way or another. It was weird how that happened, and I owe all that to God. I don't think really any of that was my doing, but I did do the parts that I could do, you know. I did the best that I could. And, you know, it's hard, man. I mean, like, when you've been, like, not in love for as long as I have, I mean, and then you haven't had your grandpa who you've wanted. It's tough, you know. But you got to look at the good things you do have. I have my dad, right? I never thought that that would happen based on my crappy whatever the hell situation I grew up with. I'm not going to get into details about, but you know, it is what it is. And you know, I also lost my grandmother too. That was my grandpa's wife. She passed away 10 years after he passed away, in the same month, weirdly enough. They both passed away in June, as far as I remember. It's kind of shitty of me if I get that wrong, but I tend to not remember things that are specifics like that because it's hard. Um, but like guys, we need to have each other's backs. You know, it's not healthy to live in this world completely alone, and too many people do, man. In countries and in places where like there's so many people, it's ridiculous. And you know, I'm not talking about like cultural or like societal. I just mean us as people. You know, like we gotta try. You know, and I know you all are, so I'm proud of you. You know, but we gotta keep trying. You know, because the reality is if we get to the end of our lives and we don't have anyone, I'm not necessarily saying you failed or it was a wasted life, but you're gonna feel pretty unhappy about yourself. Now that doesn't necessarily have to be a partner, although I hope it would be, at least for me. Maybe it could be your kids, maybe it could be a friend, maybe it could be a grandkid, who knows? But we all need someone. And for me, my hope and prayer is that that someone for me is the love of my life at some point, whenever that person, I meet that person, you know, hopefully not 25 years from now, preferably. But it doesn't have to be right now. You know, I'm patient. So, just want you to know, you guys got this. And thank you for listening to this hour-long TED Talk. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna make videos like this, right? If this kind of seems different from the content you see on my TikTok and shit, it is, but this is ultimately another part of who I am, right? So I just want you to know that. Love you all. Take care and sleep well. I'm not gonna go to bed yet, but probably gonna go watch more anime. And I don't know. I already showered, but I'm sweaty again, so maybe I'll shower again. I don't know. My hair's looking nice though, right? Nice and long. I have a new hair tie. You guys want to see my collection? I have a whole collection of hair ties now for my new job, so my hair doesn't get in my face. All right, guys. Peace. Love y'all. Take care. Bye.